What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Raphael. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? Things all good on this side, dealing with some weird weather in New Orleans right now. It's like it storms and floods every other day. It's really on shuffle, but now it's like every like hour. Like it's flooding at 11, and then it's like hot as hell outside at like 1 o'clock, and then at like 2 o'clock it might flood again. So you might want to leave the office a little early. It's just a lot going on. But wait, hold on. All right, I think Trey Murphy just made another three. I was just trying to see what was going on, but no, everything is all good on this side, man. Pels playing some good ball. I'm ready to get into how's everything on your side.
Everything is blessed on daddy duty right now, so I'm doing my best to hold it down.
Yes, Lord.
Say the prayers for all those dads that know how it is from that standpoint. But yeah, there's a lot of good basketball on. The Pels are playing good basketball. So before we jump into the show, make sure you guys are following us on X, on Twitter. That's on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. And if you're not already, make sure you are subscribed because the Pels are heating up, and so is this podcast. So let's back it up a little bit. There's two games since the last time we talked. There was the revenge game versus Indiana, where this time the Pels did not get in at 5 a.m. in the morning and did not have to mess up their schedule. They played at home. It was a home and home type situation with one day in between. And from the jump, I talked to you about this off the pod. It felt like the Pels were like, oh, that was a loss because the scheduling and the travel, not because that team is on our level. And it felt like the Pels came out with that aggression, like they can't play with us. And you saw that very quickly from Brandon Ingram. So talk to me about what you saw from that game.
Yeah, that was quite the landing for the Pelicans in this one after landing at 6 o'clock in the morning. In Indy and having to play a game 12 hours later. I mean, Brandon Ingram came out against the Pacers with like with something to prove, man. We're trying to reestablish some things, and this is my right 10-4 hat conspiracy, my 10-4 hat theory that I think that there is something between Brandon Ingram, and I've talked to you this off the pod. Again, not confirmed. I'm just off the top of my head. Where between Brandon Ingram and like Tyrese Halliburton, in the sense where it feels as though like dating back to FIBA, like it's been the Tyrese Halliburton like coming out show, right? Like he's now the guy for FIBA, and he had his blow up then, and then all through this season, he's kind of been the darling, for this team. I mean, for the NBA and for the Pacers, right, with the in-season tournament run and things like that. And it's just the NBA kind of like under the radar discourse has been like, where is Tyrese Halliburton now? Like, is he better than Brandon Ingram type situations? And then you go back to this game where, they had that game and it was the late landing and thing. And so like Tyrese Halliburton was throwing the ball off the backboard and just having, being Tyrese Halliburton. And I think it just seemed like Brandon Ingram, it's been a while since we've seen Brandon Ingram be that locked in from the tip. And with the cameras catching him scoring and saying this my ish and things like that, like he just had an extra pep in his step. But man, he couldn't have did. Zion had a bad game, a off game by his standards, by pretty much anybody's standards. But he had a pretty bad game. But Brandon Ingram couldn't have had the game he had. The Pelicans couldn't have had the score discrepancy on the scoreboard without his running mate for that night, which was Herb Jones on the defensive end. How good Brandon Ingram was on the offensive end, Herb Jones was just as good on the defensive end, holding Tyrese Halliburton to 0-0, the same amount of points as you and I had in the game. And this is an all NBA guy, who all-star, again, darling of the NBA, rightfully so with the way he's been playing. And Herb was like, I don't give a damn about none of that. He ain't scoring down here. And what a phenomenal showing on both sides of the ball by guys who are centerpieces and are franchise cornerstones for the Pelicans. And talking about Brandon Ingram and Herb Jones, just what a phenomenal response. And that is how you kind of show, that was a second night of the back-to-back with travel. This is who this team really is. And you want to make sure that you're doing those kind of things and making those kind of statements as you move into, the playoffs.
Yeah, the thing I took away from this one, again, when Brandon Ingram plays with that, I'll just call it cockiness. Like, you can't guard me, or you're too small, right? Whether it's him getting to the basket, getting to his spots, he's throwing it off the backboard to himself, hitting the triangle, in the rec. Like, when he plays like that is the level that you are expecting for Brandon Ingram on a night-to-night basis. There was a segment with Tim Legler where he's talking about how, and a lot of people have talked about how it's taken a while for Dame to kind of adjust to being, the second player in Milwaukee and having to be dominant alongside Giannis, and Giannis saying this is Dame's team and this and that. And I feel like there's an element in that for Brandon Ingram, and for people who, are questioning the fit between Zion and Brandon Ingram, which I still don't understand, like, why that's such a big argument. You also have to realize, like, this is the first time for this far along in the season where all the tools have been available. So you're asking people who, when the Pelicans went to the play-in and when the Pelicans went to the playoffs, the guy who was 1A, hey, yo, I need you to be 1B most nights. But how do you do that? In that, you saw him struggle with that in FIBA, right? Like, how do you do that on the fly in the middle of a season when the West is so competitive? And for games like this, this is the paint the picture of Brandon Ingram, go get yours. Zion will figure his out along the way and get other people involved. But you have to play with that swagginess, that cockiness, that you are that guy in order for the Pelicans to be that guy. And this was the personification of that. And so you see that. The other thing that, Willie Green mentioned after the game about JV just being a professional, where the night before, in short minutes, JV plays 7 minutes, and you're kind of like, why? Well, in this game, the Pacers had no answer for JV just because he was large. So he had 15 points and 9 rebounds. Literally the same matchup, the same team, he was able to dominate the minutes in which he was in. And so you look at that and you say, again, there's going to be pick and choose matchups when you get to the playoffs where you may have to go throw it into JV a couple times and let him expose whoever they have on the floor at the big because the other team's trying to play small and things like that. The token that you see and the biggest takeaway from this game outside of Brandon Ingram and playing with that level that you expect from Brandon Ingram is the Trey Murphy carryover. Now, all throughout the season, we've talked about it's hard. This is Trey's first injury. He's got to figure this out of how does he become him. Again, he's adjusting to having all the pieces available. How does he be Trey Murphy in this equation for the Pelicans where they're trying to figure out how the alphabet boys play with one another? Well, he's trying to figure that out while coming off an injury, trying to catch his rhythm because he missed the first part of the game. Well, the first part of the season. So the first part of the season, he's struggling a lot. And you can see it's more mental than physical. Like, he's still got the bounce. He's still got the athleticism. And as the games have gone on, you've seen him make an impact in ways outside of just shooting the ball, like getting deflections, getting blocks, getting steals, being active on the defensive end. That gave you the confidence that the shot's coming. It's just keep shooting it until it hits. Well, he's had a couple games where like, uh-oh, here it comes. And then he regresses back to the mean. Well, this stretch of this week, especially in this Pacer game, you're like, a couple games ago, Willie Green's like, welcome back, Trey Murphy, and then he has a couple downs game. Well, you were trying to wait to see, okay, Trey at 28 versus Indiana. What's he going to look like with a couple days of rest when they fly to Toronto? And you carry over to tonight's game where, again, Toronto is very undermatched. Like, their best player is probably done for the season. They are not playing for a whole lot this season. But sometimes those are the most dangerous teams at the end of season while guys are competing and trying to win certain games. It's easy to have a mental lapse. Well, very quickly in this game, as soon as he was inserted to the game, you're like, okay, Trey's back. Like the rhythm was there, the confidence was there, the lack of hesitation was there. He's making plays, he's being active everywhere. And this, I tweeted about it last game, and it's no secret. We can talk about it later in the show. When Trey hits shots, it's almost like his threes count for 6 or 7, because most of the time they're at half court, and most of the time it's because the team did a great job of boxing in Zion, and you're like, oh shit, that guy can shoot too. And when he hits those, and then he hits them consecutively, it like sucks the air out of the building. And you're like, man, if they're hitting that, we have no chance. And so that's what I mean when Trey returns back to Trey Murphy, the Pelicans get their final Infinity Stone, and they're ready to hold the gauntlet like Thanos. So talk to me about tonight. The Pelicans win by 40 plus. Again, you know, you have an even 7 guys in double figure. Trey's the only one over 20. What did you see in this game tonight, and how do you think they can use some of this to beat up on some of these teams that are undermatched and injured in the next couple games?
Yeah, Trey is back. Trey is back, and it couldn't have come at a better time right now, where the Pelicans could kind of let him get some of these games under his belt, where he's starting to feel himself against teams like the Pacers and the Raptors, and you know the other teams that you're coming up against. And so it is really good to see him come back. You know, he's on the boards. He had 6 rebounds tonight. I think he had 7 rebounds last game against the Pacers. He's in there fighting. He's in there using his length and his athleticism to get secure second chance points. And when you play ball like that, the basketball guys favor you. And so when you're in there diving for loose balls and fighting for rebounds, guess what? When you're spotting up for 3 and some of those rebounds are happening, they're coming out to you for long passes and things like that. But one of the things that you can tell when Trey is back, Trey has that youthful energy and joyfulness about the game. He's laughing, he's smiling with his shots, like he's making these faces like, whoo, like he can't believe some of the shots that he's making. And they're so confident coming off his hands. I mean, he tonight was ridiculous. They treated him like the Warriors treated Jaylen Brown. Wow. They just kept helping off of Trey. Grady Dick and all of those guys kept helping off of Trey and to build the wall in front of Zion. And Zion was doing his best Oprah impression, like, you get a shot, you get an open shot, you get a shot, you get a shot. And he was just diming him up. He had 9 assists, and Trey just being an outlet that everybody knows where he is and knows where he's going to be. And times where that paint get contested, he's a guy that you find. But I want to give the biggest, I guess, like the biggest slice of credit in this game to, again, who is becoming my favorite player on the team, Herb Jones. Mm-hmm. I mean, Herb came out in the first quarter and had like 13 points before Toronto called their first time out. Like, he is truly becoming the tone setter for the team. And we give Herb a lot of flowers on this podcast because he deserves it. I think he's a basketball genius. I think he is a savant. I think he is Rajon Rondo if he was 6'8", 6'9". Except now, like, this guy with this jumper, man. I mean, he has literally become one of the best shooters on the team. Like, it is insane to hear that, because when this guy shoots from the corner, I mean, he's turning around before the ball gets in the. This is Herb Jones we're talking about, Raph. Like, Herb Jones, who couldn't hit the side of a barn his rookie year and has just worked and worked and worked. And now there are lineups that you can run with Herb Jones now, where he is now part of the shot boys. Like, he is, you treat him as that, and he makes you pay every single time. And he just makes every single right play every single time. And he set the tone early, you know, even with Zion and BI, you know, kind of finding ways to affect the game in different ways. And it was obviously a Trey Murphy game. He just does everything the right way. Every time Herb is involved in a play, you feel like it was the right play. The shot might have not gone in, like, you know, the result might not have been what you wanted, but you feel like whatever was supposed to be executed or however that play was supposed to happen, Herb Jones made that play the correct way. And it's just a phenomenal. He is one of the hardest workers I've ever seen, because just knowing where he came from his rookie year. We covered this guy. It is night and day where he is. Shout out to Fred Vincent for his work, but Herb putting in that work, and you start to those stories you hear about, Larry talking about him being locked in the gym, and you're like, okay, you hear that, but like you hear that from like one player from every team, but like his work is showing loudly on in front of our eyes. And so he was phenomenal. The whole team was phenomenal. Season high, tied in the season high with 38 assists. If you're going to move the ball that way, we always stretch on this podcast, that ball moves faster than man. It always will. It always has. It's been like that since basketball was invented. It's going to be like that 100 years from now. That ball is going to always move faster than that man. And when you're moving the ball and doing that, and defenses have to say, okay, do we box up Zion and things like that? Like, the ball is moving, and these guys are just finding what Trey was wide open on so many shots. And that is the kind of offense that will get you far, in games and get you, these big leads without the main players having to play long, extended minutes. And it just was an all around great game tonight against the Raptors. And they need, if this is the blueprint. I still think that Zion and BI and CJ, they'll be able to have the games where they'll be able to take off. Obviously, we talk about the difference between the egalitarian offense and the center-starred offense. But this egalitarian effort felt more like Zion and Brandon Ingram had their hands on different things in the game. And it just was Trey Murphy's night. And it's just going to be like that sometimes. You're going to need game in the playoffs where Trey Murphy wins you a game because Zion and Brandon Ingram didn't. And damn it, that is the luxury of having players like this so deep in the roster.
Right. You look at games like this, and you're not necessarily looking at the win or loss. Obviously, you need to win versus the teams under 500 and the teams that aren't playing for anything. But it's how you win, right? It's, do you come out and assert yourself knowing that you got 20 some odd games left and it's time to go? Like, these are the games where you come in and you make quick of it, and you move on and get people playing time that may not get playing time for the rest of the season. Like, those are the things that you need. The other part is, like, you make a really good point in that, it's different, the offense, when it's egalitarian, when it's all coming from the source of penetration toward the goal or source of Brandon Ingram forcing the issue, and everyone else is feeding off of that. I think that the offense where everyone touches the ball, but like it never goes inside the 3-point line, that's the issue for the Pelicans. Now, I mean, I had this conversation with you off the pod. How deep can other people go before you start going, I don't know. Like, okay, Brandon Ingram scored 20, Zion scored 20, CJ scored 20. Well, most people stop there in terms of guys that could win you a game and score 20 or 30. Some people might have one guy off the bench. But you just talked about it. What Herb Jones has been able to do, and again, I give him a lot of credit because he's really been doing this since the end part of last year. And yeah, it started off a little rough this year, but then quickly you're like, oh, wait, like last year wasn't a fluke. We had a whole pod about what Herb Jones can do. And for his part, and the part that you highlight the most is like his IQ of what he means to the team and how to play within his role. It's one thing, everyone's like, don't park Herb to the corner. That's not what he is. Well, he's like, that's what the teams are going to give me. Yes, I need to get 1-2 better inside the paint. Yes, I need to be able to finish Josh Hart like on a fast breaking transition. But these corner threes are going to be the thing that make or break me playing on the court in playoff series. And that's exactly what he worked on in order to be effective. And to your point, confident as hell letting the ball go from the 3-point line. Like AD said on the broadcast, I've been saying this for months. When they don't go in from Herb, I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, wait, that looked good, right? And that's a crazy place to be. And so if you've got a Herb Jones, if you've got a Jonas Valanciunas, if you've got a Trey Murphy that can take over a game, I'm not saying have like one of those games like D'Lo where he scored 20 points, like score 35, score 30 points in a game. There's not a lot of teams that have that on top of having the star power of Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. And so like having a equal base offense a little bit different when you have the talent for guys that could start on many other teams. Look at Dallas. Luka is playing 2K on rookie right now and putting up ridiculous, and they are taking L's because their role players just aren't there. They just aren't good enough to help him in other ways. And so, again, the Pelicans are in a different situation in terms of the momentum they have going into the next like 3 or 4 games, to be honest with you. Like Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell is working back from something. The Clips game is going to be huge because if the Clippers lose any more games between now and then, you could be looking at a potential swap in that 4 and 5 spot. There's a lot of moving parts there. But I have a question for you. And I've seen it kind of surface, and obviously you get the random reports of like, oh, it's going to be a tough decision between Trey and Herb this summer, or it's going to be a damning decision with Brandon Ingram this summer. First of all, I'll be the first to tell you, Brandon Ingram's going to get whatever he asked for in terms of max contract this summer, so you go ahead and forget about that. But here's a question I have for you. Regardless of the outcome, like let's say the Pelicans win in the first round, win in the second round, get ousted in the first, or whatever it may be. Do you think this is a make or break year for like picking Zion or Brandon Ingram? Because that's like kind of the thing where people like they're gonna have to choose. I don't necessarily see it that way, but where do you stand on the topic?
Nah, I've never wavered from my position that I think that Brandon Ingram and Zion have more upside to their pairing than I think we give them credit for, or that people give them credit for. Because again, this is a team who has not had a lot of time on task. But there are games, and they've been a couple of games this season where those two guys in the game look like the best duo in the league. Like there are games where they look like that. Now, do they come as often as you would like? No. And again, I harp back to the games that we're seeing right now that they're having should have been able to have been had in year 2, in year 3, in year 4. But here we are, year 5, and you're finally starting to see the fruits of those guys and their talent and the gravity that they bring. There is some overlapping skill. Of course, there is obviously overlapping skill because both of the guys are not great 3-point shooters and sometimes don't like to take the 3-point shots. However, Brandon Ingram is starting to show a willingness to do that, take threes and take catch and shoot threes, and things like that. He's starting to see, okay, this guy is a little different, so I know how to play off him. He's also finding now, as of recently, kind of finding a little bit of his rhythm as far as like contributing in all the different ways on the floor, right? And then Brandon Ingram is just really freaking good. He's really freaking good. He's a matchup nightmare. He's tall. He's a tall shot creator that makes tough shots. What you're gonna need in the playoffs? You're gonna need tough shot makers. And my question, as I throw it back to you and to anybody else, like what is the alternative, right? What if Brandon Ingram is not your cup of tea? Understand. Point. Here's a fact. He's a 25 going on 26-year-old, 20+ point per game scorer who is elevating his playmaking game, elevating his leadership game. These are objective facts. Where is that production coming from? If you look at the landscape of the NBA, you look at free agents, you look at who might be available for trade, where is that kind of production and that kind of skill set and that kind of buy-in into the locker room? Where are you getting that? Where else are you getting that on the market? And please, if there's people that I'm glaringly missing, put them in the comments. Let's have a discussion about them, because I must be missing it, because I just don't know with this team so young. And again, obviously there are younger teams. The Thunder are coming, things like that. Brandon Ingram's 25. Zion is what, 22, 23 years
Brandon
old?
Ingram's 26. Zion turns 24.
26.
Yeah.
At 24. 26 and 24. 5 years, these guys will still be 30, 29 years old, which you still have a lot of time. Ask Paul George and Kawhi and all of those guys who are playing to 34, 35 at a high level. So I just think that this team, as constructed, you're finally starting to see, you've put so much effort into seeing this team kind of get to the places, take the next steps, and start to look like the team that they look now. For me personally, it would not make sense to completely overhaul it and try to find a replacement for Brandon Ingram because he isn't your cup of tea or whatever the case is. He's just really, really good. He fits with Zion. They just need time. It sucks that it happens in year 5, but think of year 5 as like year 2 for them right now as far as playing together.
Right. That is exactly my point. This summer, like, think about all the trades you've seen in the past couple of years that the Pelicans made. Outside of the KD trade, I'm not sure any of those trades you got the better player back. And again, what is the prime for most NBA players? Like 25 to like 32? Brandon Ingram was 26 years old. So, like, this is the upward arch of what he's going to be. I keep going back to Zion is 23 years old. Like, what we're seeing right now is like the first substantial amount of back-to-back. Again, the games that he's missed this year for injury has been like 3 or 4. So, like, this is the most substantial games that you've seen from Zion in a season. Everyone's like, well, he doesn't do this, and he doesn't do that, and he doesn't shoot that. I'm like, this is like the beginning of what Zion is going to be, and it's pretty damn good today. Like, you just talked about it. You talked about it's year 2. It's less than that. They played 139 games together through 5 years. That's like a season and a half, right? And like that hasn't even been with like tools that just don't, like the Eric Bledsoe, the Steven Adams. That hasn't even been with like this conglomerate of players, right? And so like it's something that you have to get down to. It's something we go back to this offseason. It's like if you look at the competitors in the West and you look at the competitors in the East, again, how many times did you see people saying that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown don't work together? Like they wanted to trade that pairing up until last year. Like that's how the narrative works. But like if you look at these teams, they're veteran-laden. They've got role play like Drew Holiday and Brooke Lopez. You got all these Aaron, like you got all these guys in all these different places. What is the common denominator? Most of those people are in their prime. They're 26, they're 29, they're 32, 31. Look at the Pelicans roster. All of their players outside of maybe CJ and JV are on the rise. Like this is not the best version you're going to see of these players. What is the rush to go trade it? Who is the better player that you're trading Brandon Ingram go get? Because this summer it was Scoot Henderson. And if you're watching basketball this season, I'm not sure you would still have a job if you had traded Brandon Ingram for Scoot Henderson. So like I just look at that, I'm like, I just don't see it from that end. I agree with you. I think it's time on task with this group. Now, I do think this is the last year where no moves are made. I do think there's a consolidation to be had with draft picks, with moves around the edges to go get athletic center, to go get a scorer off the bench. Like I think that it's the last iteration of this 14 guys together, but I don't think those top guys are going anywhere anytime soon. So that brings up a good point on my last point. We talked about all through the season, there was a time when Willie Green called Jackson Hayes the X factor of this team. Well, Trey Murphy scored 34 points tonight. Last game, Herb Jones held Tyrese Halliburton to a goose egg. When you think about playoffs and you think about the matchups that are coming up and what is needed to get out of a drag-out series that's 2 equal-based teams or whatever it may be, in your opinion, who is the X factor on this team today? Because I think depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer.
And here's my answer. I think it's going to be literally on a game-by-game basis. It's a cop-out answer, but again, I keep talking about the uniqueness of the Pelicans, from the uniqueness of Zion, the uniqueness of Brandon Ingram, the uniqueness of Herb Jones, the uniqueness of Trey Murphy, a 3-point shooter who was in the slam dunk contest. Like the uniqueness of the starting 5. It's just a unique situation. The uniqueness of having all of this talent and also a ton of draft picks behind valuable draft picks behind you. It's just everything is there's a lot of uniqueness about the situation the Pelicans are in. And it stretches to the X factor discussion, because if you told me Jose Alvarado won game 2 in round 1, I'd be like, well, I mean, I've seen him do it before. If you told me Herb had a 35-point game where he just went crazy, I'd be like, oh, well, you know, and won game 3 of round 1, I'd be like, oh, well. If Trey Murphy went for a 40 ball and went 12 for 12 from 3, I'd be like, oh, well, I've seen that before. If you would have told me that JV scored 30 and 15 and could not be stopped and won game 6 of the first round of the playoffs, I'd be like, oh, well, that could be that. So, and again, it goes back to the roster. If you force me to ask a question, I think to answer the question, I think it's Trey Murphy, because Trey Murphy's shooting just does so much for the offense. And when his shots are falling, just like a lot of other NBA players, he is locked in a different kind of way. He's rebounding. He's playing defense better. And I think that the Trey Murphy we've seen the last 2 games can offset a bad night from anyone on the Pelicans team. So if you go into the game, you know, you're game planning against the Pelicans, and let's say you get a game where Zion is a crazy game where Zion is off, BI is off, and CJ is off, I think that you could be like, oh, damn, Trey Murphy got 30. All right, so we got like, he can offset that. But again, with so many really good rotation players, hell, if you told me that Najee had a 13-point quarter and won a fourth quarter game for the Pelicans, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't be like, oh, wait, Jeremiah Robinson Earl had 40. Like, it wouldn't feel like that. It would feel like, okay, I've seen that happen. I've seen Najee have a good game. And so that's what I mean about the uniqueness of this team, where you just have so many guys that have contributed in ways that you need to have in a playoff series. And you've seen all of these guys, these others, the second line and others, kind of just have moments throughout the years they've been here, and the years that, you know, and this year as well. And so my true answer is that I think it's a game by game basis. I think one game it could be Herb, one game it could be Trey, one game it could be this guy. But I think if you held the Nerf gun to my head and forced me to answer the question, shout out to Zach Lowe, I think it's Trey Murphy, because what he brings to the court, nobody else, you know, really does. And his energy is contagious, and his shot making does things for the Pelicans. It shifts the floor and gives everybody else just so much room to do whatever they want to do.
So I have a difference in opinion. I think in order for the Pelicans to get out of round 1, Trey Murphy has to be Trey Murphy. So in that scenario, I don't think he's an X factor. I think he's a necessity in order to make these teams. Like, if you go one by one, again, Zion is the big unknown, because you've never seen Zion in a playoff series. And like we've talked about before, he could, you know, average 25 and be okay, or he could be like, there's no answer for that guy, and what the hell do we do? Nobody knows yet. So that's a cop-out. So let's just assume BI and Zion have been playing the way they play. In order for you to match the Lukas and the Kyries and the Jokic's and all those people of the world, the Kevin Durant's, you're going to need at least 2 of your 4 alphabet boys to be in the 20s or 25s or the 30s. And the shots are not going to go to Zion, because people are going to stop Zion or put bodies in the lane to stop Zion. They're going to go to Trey. And so I think that in order for the Pelicans to do anything, Trey has to be Trey. So my answer, although if you would have asked me like a month ago, I would have said Dyson Daniels, because I think Dyson in some situations is a better matchup than Herb, which is crazy to say. But my answer is Herb. And it's not because of the 3. I think, again, that's a part of the reason why the Pelicans are in the position that they are to make a push into the top 4, because of Herb's growth on the offensive end. It's because when I watch these Western Conference games, and you and I talked about, we watched another game before, and it's like, oh, okay, on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you got D'Lo, you got Austin Reeves. Like, the way that Herb's able to, he's not going to hold anybody to 0 points like he did Tyrese Halliburton. But the way he's able to make life difficult, like, look at some of Shea's most difficult games this season. It's been against Herb Jones. Look at Luka's most difficult game. It's been against Herb Jones. Look at De'Aaron Fox. It's been against Herb Jones. Nobody in the West has that. Like, Jaden McDaniels, he's a really good defender as well, and I think that he's a really good player. I just don't think he's on the same level as Herb Jones is defensively. That's just where I am from that standpoint. And so if you have a defensive ace who can also hit the corner three, I think that again, you may not stop any of these perimeter players in the West, but if you can slow them down and they don't have anyone to slow you down on the opposite end, I just think that's the X factor. Now, the reason why I would have said Dyson a month ago, because like if you look at the way Dyson was kind of guarding Luka and guarding Jason Tatum and guarding some of these bigger bodies, like Herb is still slender, but some of these bigger body wings like to throw their weight around, like versus the Clippers, they weren't moving Dyson off the spot. And so, like, if you got, Herb Jones just sat down. Now we got a breather. We're bringing our second unit to go score. Oh, damn. Dyson is out there, too, leading the top 10 in deflections, top 10 in steals per game. We get no break throughout the course of the game. And so, that again, we've talked about defense being the thing that the Pels have to bring night in and night out because that is their identity. They won by 100 points tonight, 40 points tonight, whatever it was. And again, they helped the team under 100 points. Like, some of these blowouts you're seeing by some of these other teams, they're not holding people under 100 points on the opposite end as well. And so if you can do it, again, the Pels are a defensive team with a scary offensive ceiling. I don't know if they reached their offensive ceiling this season, but if you're pretty close to it and you're holding it down defensively, you got a good shot to upset some teams in the West. So that's all we got for you today. Again, the Pels are building something here. They get another couple days off. They get another wounded team that they're fighting for their lives, trying to keep their playoff spots where they're at. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
Yeah, as always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. The Pelicans, I'm not sure what it is, but they're figuring something out, and I think this is the perfect time to be figuring that out. And you know, with these comments that you heard from Zion about people don't understand how much I love this shit and stuff like that. Like this is just it's hard to not see the Pelicans being on the right side of the momentum. And as these teams above them, you know, kind of fall back. There's now a 4-way tie at the top with Denver and the Clippers and the OKC and Minnesota. Some of those teams going to have to lose some games. And if the Pelicans continue to take care of their business against this schedule, you know, that 5 seed and having to go on the road to open that series up, it's a very different feeling when you're opening that series up at home. So, you know, as they continue to take care of their business, you know, that they'll land their way, and they'll hopefully be able to move up and have some upward mobility in the standings. So, as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO No E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Network, and we'll see